budget, and I went on to like Turbo Squid, and I bought a bunch of models, right? So because I needed to be sure I own the copyrights to it. So by going to Turbo Squid, when you buy the model, you own the copyrights. You can make illustrations. You can use those models in a video game, et cetera, et cetera. So I went on and I bought some engine pieces. And that's about it. Some things were pieces of architecture. This was a piece of architecture, like a greenhouse actually, made up that whole vehicle, and punched in some holes, et cetera, and added to this thing. So it's just silliness. It's fun. That was modeled from scratch, actually. But if you look closely, it's awful. So I would need a lot of Photoshop cleanup, but it'll get it before the book goes to press. This one I built like an F-16 fighter pilot cockpit with a seat and everything, and it probably took about 6 months to model it, and a big turbine engine, right? And then I would go in and assign all the shaders and tweak it, and then I would keep things, delete things, modify things, stretch it, distort it, and that's the really fun part. It's not doing all the detail stuff for me, it's actually just modifying it, tweaking it. This model was made by somebody else, and it's still work in progress to clean up reflections and things. It's actually really low-res model. It's not even subdivided. It's just straight triangles, poly model. But in Modo, again, what I love is the rendering engine. It's this is an HDR. So I started painting all my own HDR images in Photoshop. So working like 16 or 32-bit, I paint my own, and then make tunnels and crazy lighting setups. So this is sort of a very inventive lighting setup, and it's all carbon fiber. Can't really see it very good. That's really like a junkyard thing, right? That's like a frame from a Catagram 7 that's been turned 90 degrees and distorted and tweaked and mirrored to the other side with the same little engine bit that I bought, and then made some wheels. So it's kind of fun. And there's that one's like really painted over salvage thing. These guys are bad, right? They're pirates. Skull crossing. And there's the race reporter of that one. And then it gets a lot of Photoshop work back over the top, so painting up a lot of things. I think that might be it for the books. Alright, so now, let's see if I have anything else. I don't really have anything else. I think that might be time for questions. And then I can pull open stuff if you guys want to see other things. If it helps me answer a question, I can open up whatever. So, questions? Any questions? Yeah, sure.
I know at Art Center they do a number of bits, probably like maybe 4 bits compressed or so there, and I know there's a heavy, at least I would think so, at least there's a heavy emphasis on perspective.
Yes.
Recently in CCS we just started putting emphasis on old school like metric perspective as far as cubicle space is concerned, all the way to 3-point, which I guess I don't really keep in the books anymore. And I'm wondering how necessary that is to show in your portfolio for the industry. How much is enough? Or is it just enough to show the final paintings with simple process for that perspective?
Yeah. Well, in my old department, which I wrote the curriculum for, we have Viscom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 out of every 8 terms. We also have advanced perspective digital landscape painting in addition to those Viscom classes. So that's 9 that I can think of that are specifically Viscom. And so it's incredibly important, basically. So you need the ability to draw and paint anything. Okay, so if you want to have as many opportunities as possible, the basic job description is this. You need the ability to design characters, vehicles, environments, and props in any time period. So Da Vinci or Tron. Okay? So the guys you'll be competing with can do that, and the women can do that. Okay, so what you need to do is match that and exceed it, so you have all the opportunities. And there is no way that having more skill and more ability is ever a bad idea. So why not? Just makes you more and more competitive. But 3 points, like, just get started. Like big cityscape, 27 point. Things twisted, pointed, all over the place. So yeah, definitely do everything you can do. 3D, 2D, photography, photo booth, collage, as much as you can do to be innovative and competitive. Yes?
Aside from using like photo booth, where do you get your inspiration and motivation from? Because you've done, just so
Yeah,
Where does it come from?
I don't know. I think I get bored. But the thing is, I'm not ADD at all, which is really odd. I like maybe the work is like the perfect link, but it's not. I'm like super mellow. Imran knows I'm actually super mellow and quiet. I like to just hide out places and just. I don't know. I think I just love process, and I like to reinvent. But you know what it is? It's education. Back to Imran's point, is that I love the process of learning, and I love the moment of discovery. And then I'd like to refine that moment of discovery into a process that I can share with other people. And so the photo booth thing became that for me on Alien Race, for instance. And now the sort of moto rendering and kit bashing in that experiment is becoming the next thing that I can document in a book and share. And then, after that will be something else. So.
Does that work well for work, or is that just sort of good for fun time?
For
like,
books?
You got time to do it.
Actually, the alien thing is really good for work. Neville does it. He loves it. He's been using it for a bunch of creatures that he's been doing. So he's been doing the photo booth thing a lot. Because, in a couple of days he can bang out, more than a dozen portrait shots that look photoreal. And, and that's really what, if you want to work in feature films, everybody wants to see it photoreal. So straight up, it's got to be all photoreal. Because they wanted to see what it's going to look like in the final film before they say yes or no. So the rendering level needs to be at that level. I've actually used it. I was saying to the group I was lecturing here earlier, was that I had a job come in and they wanted me to do an alien thing. So I said, I'll try to do photo booths specific to a task and specific to a brief versus just totally random happy accident style. And so what they had done is they had designed a look for the alien already. They had a color palette, they had a graphic style. And so I looked at the color palette, replicated that in Photoshop. I looked at the graphic style. I made a bunch of shapes, right, that had that feel to it. Printed it on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. Printed it, proceeded to crumple it up, right, and held it in front of my camera, and generated like 40 alien heads, okay? And then it went in back and painted on top of them. And that wasn't quite right, and then they hit me with, oh yeah, but it's got to be translucent. I was like, oh, why didn't you tell me that before, right? I just did all these paintings, and, So then you figure out and you wrap a piece of wax paper on it and backlight it, and now it's translucent, right? So now it's completely different. And it worked really,